I'm going to try and go through some of the references from the song so people know what I'm talking about. I'm a quantum physicist and mathematician. You won't have heard of me because I'm constantly censored. The people in control don't want you to know about me. I have a full working theory of everything which explains everything in physics, but it proves the Big Bang wrong and it proves the particle model wrong. It proves that they're both pseudoscience. They're both theories which should have been promoted over the year as theories, but they've been promoted as if they are scientific facts. You'll actually find these in your encyclopedias stating as if they're scientific facts. They're not. They're theories, and they're wrong. And they've censored me for years. If anybody doubts that, I've solved two of the most famous mathematical problems in history: Goldbach's conjecture and proof a second loop is impossible in the Collatz conjecture. Now, these are mathematical problems which are on a scale, some people call them impossible problems because they're so difficult and so many people have worked on them. And I solved them because I looked at them really simply and I took them logically. I didn't follow everybody else, getting things more complicated. I did a similar thing to what happened in that film, Ready Player One. I went backwards against what logic would tell you to do, to focus on the primes, and I focused on the composites, and I solved the Goldbach conjecture, and I solved proved the second loop impossible in the Collatz conjecture, which is called the impossible problem because it looks like it should be easy to solve, but no one's been able to solve it in almost 100 years. Some of the top mathematicians in the world working on it. So that's my credentials. I don't have a university degree in mathematics or in quantum physics. The quantum physics that's taught, they don't understand it themselves, and they're trying to teach it to people without understanding it, which is a really bad position to start from. And it's full of all these assumptions and conclusions based on data which are wrong, which don't make sense, but it's the best that they have. So they promote these as if they're fact, which is really bad practice. It shouldn't have been happening, but it has been happening. And when the scientists come up with better ideas and better theories, they have censored scientists, not just me, I'll talk about it later, but not just me, scientists all around the world. They've censored them so that people don't get the correct information and they stay in control, getting massive grants. And in their defence, they say they have fantastic measurements, and they have. And they can make great technology. They can make a certain amount of technology using the particle model. But there's whole loads of other technology which we could be developing and is very possible using the correct model of physics, which is impossible under the particle model. And I'll talk about that later as well. But I just want to I'll try and quickly go through the points in the video. First about the moon landing. It's a phenomenal achievement. A phenomenal achievement. There's no doubt about it. To create such a lie and fool so many people and to have it go on for so long, it's an absolutely phenomenal achievement. And it's defended by pseudoscientists, people who call themselves scientists and they're not scientists. They take in information and they parrot, reproduce the information like parrots. They're really good at retaining information, but they're not very good at thinking for themselves, thinking critically. I'll maybe talk about one or two of those, but I want to get straight into the moon landing facts and the arguments that the people from NASA use to try and fool people. Now, if anybody believes that conspiracies don't exist, they use this term conspiracy theorist. They imply that the person is he's paranoid, he's got this idea. The moon landings in Apollo 11, 1969, they were overseen by President Nixon, who was caught in a conspiracy, trying to manipulate the Democrats by breaking into their building. He was caught, he had to resign. As far as I know, he's the only president in American history who had to resign because he was caught conspiring against the people of America. So he was caught in a conspiracy. So if you think that conspiracies don't exist, you've been intimidated, you've been lied to, and you've been manipulated, you've been hypnotized. In hypnotism, you use a timing device. Classically, you got the watch in front of your eyes, which is the classical way of portraying hypnotism. And the moon is a timing device. And a lie is a form of hypnotism because you're setting up a false reality which doesn't make sense. And you get all this cognitive dissonance where people's body language and what they're saying doesn't add up to what feels right. So you know it. And it's really difficult to break. People have been hypnotized for the last 50 years by NASA and their lies. And this is Buzz Aldrin admitting at last that they never went to the moon. But the hypnotism is so strong that people would just find all ways to deny it, that he actually admitted that they never went. And this was taken at the National Book Fair in 2015 in the USA. And you can see the original video is still up on YouTube. It's Roarbots is the channel. And both Aldrin and Nixon would have come from families which are closely associated with the KKK, Freemason families. And they were the people that were involved in this. I know we have that film about the African American women working in the mathematics, but you can see the racism there, and they were put in the back room. One person was on their side, but even they implied that they would have known everything that was going on is not true. They might have known things that were going on with the rocks and stuff, but who was actually inside, there's no reason for them to know at all.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
And here's some of the points that I'm going to talk about, some of the arguments that are given by NASA and their team of agents. They have thousands of people on payrolls getting paid to provide misinformation, to give wrong information, to make sure people keep believing this. And one of the arguments actually that I'll start off with that NASA agents use is that
for the fake going to the moon,
everybody who works for NASA and their associated businesses would have had to have known about it, and something like 500,000 people would have had to know and all been in this and all keep quiet. It's a stupid argument, and nobody should fall for it. It's like saying if a mafia gang robbed a bank, all their extended family would have to know. All the people that they deal with would have had to know. Whoever supplied the car, whoever supplied the fuel within the car, whoever supplied their clothes, they would all have to have known about it. It's just a really stupid argument. But these guys are so trusted. We're a species, we're a pack species. Humans trust each other. That's the foundation of our civilization, is trust. And we trust. And over the years, we've tended to trust the kings because they've been the bravest. And we've tended to trust the scientists because they have been the ones who've helped us forge through to better days and made our lives more comfortable, more safe. But what's happened in the last 50 years since going to the moon is science has been dropped in the bin, and it's been taken over by pseudoscience, promoted as fact, and it's made our world much more dangerous. A lot of people already feel that. The other thing about saying that everybody had to be in, and it's just a stupid argument. But the other argument they say is that pretending going to the moon would have been more difficult than actually going to the moon. Again, it's a really stupid argument. It's like saying an American swam to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and everybody in the world was watching it live on TV in a frog suit and flippers, swam to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. And if that wasn't true, everybody would have called it out. Now, it's physically impossible for a human to swim to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. It's physically impossible. Just the same as it's physically impossible for a human to go to the moon. And I'll explain some of the physics why that's impossible. But of course, every point that I will make, you'll get these goons, agents paid by NASA to lie and to mislead you. And I'll explain why they're still doing it. People think, well, what's the point? Why do they need to? It's a military operation. It's a part of the USA military. And part of military strategy is to confuse and to mislead the enemy. And these guys controlling NASA, they seem to see everybody as the enemy. The Nazis, von Braun was a Nazi scientist who was brought over to the USA after the end of the Second World War. He was a rocket scientist, and he was the guy who spearheaded, who led the NASA team getting to the moon. He was a Nazi. A Nazi managed the Apollo missions. That's not made up. You can check that out yourself. You can check all these facts that I'm going to go through. He was a physical Nazi. He worked for Hitler. He was one of Hitler's closest friends by all accounts. And he's leading this team who said they got men to the moon. And you trust them. And one of the arguments that you use is that the Russians, if they had tried faking it, the Russians would have called them out. Firstly, there's no doubt that you could get that they got spaceships up, maybe in orbit at the moon. Quite possible. And they could relay sound from the moon, so it seemed like the sound was coming from the moon, even though it was probably pre-recorded. There's no doubt about that. But the other thing about the Soviet space program is it was run by Nazi rocket scientists as well. Von Braun's associate, his colleagues. So they would have been in contact. And it's in their interest as well to keep it quiet, because then they can manipulate people as well. And again, if people think that believing that there's conspiracy and everybody in the world is honest, you're in cuckoo land. This is from the very first start of wars and conflict within human societies. There's been people lying and people conspiring. Conspiring is lying. It's happened from the beginning of time. If anybody says, oh, he believes in lies, cuckoo. These are really violent people, really obsessed with power and violence. And as for everybody needing to be involved, there actually, people did talk about it. And one of the most famous people is a guy called Bill Kaysing. And he has a website dedicated to him, talking about all the evidence that he had, saying that they never went to the moon. He was a rocket scientist, and one of the things that really made him started to suspect that something wasn't right. He said that this lunar module that supposedly landed on the moon, he said they couldn't get it to land on Earth. He was working with them. He said they couldn't get it to land on Earth. And how the heck can you get it to land on a planet where there's no atmosphere? Your rockets can't manoeuvre against the air in the atmosphere to provide you with base, so you have much less control. And yet they seamlessly got it to land on the moon. No problem. Landing on the moon when there's gamma radiation. We know now there's high levels of gamma radiation. The temperature of the moon is extremely high. It's extremely hostile. And they got this land on the moon, this thing that looks like Team America from South Park or Thunderbirds or Go. It literally looks like something out of those cartoons. And people have sucked in for so many reasons. One of them being patriotism, because they're defending their country. They're not going to say anything about their country. And that's a mistake, because the same military will use American kids, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds in the military, use them and send them off to war to get slaughtered, to get maimed, to murder other people and slaughter other people, using lies, as we all know. I'll talk a little bit about that later on as well. So if you think that you're supporting this and you're doing something for your country, you're being patriotic, you're not. These people don't give a shit about anybody. They don't, even though Nazis were the enemy in the World War II, they took them under the wing and they paid them to create this lie. Now, another thing that they say is the photographs. We have modern photographs taken from the moon, and you can clearly see from orbital ships going around the moon, taking photographs, and you can clearly see those modules there and the tracks where the humans went round. And these are independent, verified independent organisations taking these photographs. If you believe that they're independent and they're not getting massive money from NASA to Photoshop these images, I wouldn't want to be you. I wouldn't want to leave my finances or my people to be looked after by you, to be honest. No offence, but you need to wake up. Now, as for the stars in the background, that's a point that it doesn't seem plausible to me. You should still see stars, but I'm not going to go down and argue that. As for the light, the shadows going in different directions, again, you have hills and you have valleys, so that's not a point I'm going to argue with. It's not really important. There's enough evidence to show that it's absolutely impossible without going into that.
Just editing the video, and I just thought I'd add in terms of stars, it would have been very difficult to put the exact stars in the right place, located at that time, So it's much easier, just do not put the stars in at all costs. And as for the hammer and the feather experiment, that feather was made out of metal, exactly the same weight as the hammer, and painted to look like a feather.
Rocks with set numbers. There's a famous rock that has C written on it, which film crews do. They put letters or they put symbols on their props to make sure they're set up in the same place. And there's that famous photo of the rock with C written on it. It's a prop from a film set. And there's films from 2 of the different missions that went to the moon. And when you look at the background, it's the same background. And they're supposed to be in 2 different locations, but they're the same background in the film. They just got thought, hey, we're getting away with this. Why bother changing the set? We'll just use the set and maybe change it a little bit or film from a different angle. But it's the same set in the background. Now, the original pictures, these would be the most valuable pictures ever probably in the history of mankind. They went astray. Can't find them. They got lost. And the thing is, if the original photographs were there, they could be analysed and really taken apart, and people have a better idea what the truth is, but they went missing. I'm not sure exactly the story. One story I heard was because they couldn't find a place to store it. Again, it's just a stupid idea. The most valuable photographs in history, they couldn't find somewhere suitable to store it, so they just ended up getting destroyed or going missing.
Just to clarify a point, the reason why those photographs would have been so valuable is because, to go back to the point about the stars, in original photographs, these weren't digital photographs, these were old style film photographs, so the resolution would have gone down to the molecular level, and so when you zoom in those photographs, you would see stars, and experts in cosmology could have analysed those stars, and they would have seen very quickly that they don't represent the real stars if it was a fake set, but of course they went missing. With the effect that you have the majority of the top scientists in the world fooled by this, trusting that NASA are telling the truth. And they in turn will mock and laugh and marginalise other people who say that it's a lie.
Now, lasers off the moon, they say that they got these mirrors on the moon, which is absolute concrete evidence that they got to the moon. The fact is that astrophysicists in MIT in 1963 were bouncing lasers off the natural mirrors on the moon. That's the fact. And when you throw that at the NASA agents, they say, oh, well, we've got better mirrors. Yeah, whatever. It's bullshit. The fact is, lasers have been bounced off the moon since 1963, 6 years before 1969. NASA astronauts in the space station say we can't get beyond close Earth orbit. Can't do it. And I figured out exactly why that is. And it's not really to do with the Van Allen belts. The Van Allen belts are these radiation belts around the Earth, and they have really high radiation, really dangerous, really hot. And we can't even get biological creatures beyond the Van Allen belts. The tardigrade is one of the toughest little creatures on Earth. It's a tiny microscopic animal, and it can survive acid pools and temperatures above 60 degrees Celsius, which would scorch the skin of you, but they survive in these kind of conditions on Earth, and they sent those into space, and they can't survive. They can survive better than humans to a degree, but they can't survive in space. What they do is they remove all the water from their bodies, and they can tolerate, and when they come back, then they hydrate again. But when they go past a certain level beyond the Earth, they can't. They don't survive. And they say the humans got beyond that with no radiation shielding, with no specific technology to protect them from the heat, and no form of sickness, travel sickness, nothing. Good old American guys made out of the good old grit stuff and all that bullshit. They're liars.
You probably know the clocks tick faster at higher altitudes than at lower altitudes, and this video explains how that works at the quantum level.
And it should help you understand why it's physically impossible for men to get to the moon.
In an atomic clock, energy is inserted into an atom, and when the electron shell has been saturated, emits a photon, marking an increment in time.
And just before I talk about Einstein's special relativity, I'm going to point out something that might surprise a lot of people. The equation A equals mc squared was first formulated by French physicist Henri Poincaré in 1900, and 5 years later Einstein used it in his equations for relativity. It's another lie embedded in our culture that it's Einstein's equation when it's not.
Einstein's equations of relativity describe a lattice which fills every part of space. In this image, the top illustration represents the space-time fabric in deep space. The bottom illustration shows where the space-time fabric is stretched in the area surrounding where it is compacted into places like planets and stars. In this illustration, the electron shell is represented by 6 points in the space-time fabric, in the vertical direction coming out from the planet or star's core. So while an electron shell ticks at one rate in deep space, it ticks at a slower rate when on or near the surface of a planet because the fabric of space is stretched. This means the electron shell is stretched also, so it takes more time to fill and saturate it and force a photon to be emitted and mark an increment in time. Now, while there are more points in the horizontal direction, the fact is that these electrons are moving at 137th the speed of light, which means they can't cut corners, so are forced into wider electron shells. This also explains the neutral H problem in the Sun's photosphere. In the Sun, neutral hydrogen exists with massive energies which is impossible on Earth. It is a problem which has baffled and troubled physicists and cosmologists for decades. But because the fabric of space is stretched much more near the Sun, it means their electron shells are stretched to thousands of times wider in the Sun's environment than they would be on Earth, therefore able to contain thousands of times much more energy than they would be able to on Earth before being converted. This also explains why NASA can't get humans past the low orbit radiation barrier on Earth. Our biological bodies are designed to function on low Earth orbit and begin to dysfunction quite soon if we try to leave low Earth orbit. And for anybody who still believes that men went to the moon because Big Bang time travel pseudoscientists say that you're a knobhead or an idiot if you don't believe them. Here's what NASA are currently saying.
To destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
But as you can see, when you understand the quantum structure of the space-time fabric, this is never going to happen. Humans are never going to leave low Earth orbit in human bodies, in metal spaceships, unless we can figure out how to stretch the fabric of space itself.
And if you look at the press conference of the NASA astronauts after they came back to the Earth, their body language, it's not like now and again they give it away. From the start to the finish, they're stammering, they're looking at each other, they're licking their lips, they're crouching their head. All their body language is like criminals who are under interrogation. And if you compare that with somebody who's won Champions League or the World Cup in a press conference, they can hardly contain their excitement. The words just flow out of them. They're sitting there lying. And there's one clip of Buzz Aldrin, and he's sitting when he's in the solitary for the 21 days before they did the press conference, and the camera's on him, and his bottom lip starts to wobble, you know, like a child that's been naughty. Shame. Now, I'm going to show a little film about the lunar rover speeded up. This is footage of the lunar rover at the speed which they say it happened. This is what they presented to the public, saying this was the lunar rover on the moon. Now, with 1/6 the gravity of the Earth, that thus being flung up should travel 6 times higher than it does on the Earth. And in fact, even more, because there's no air, there's no atmosphere to cause air resistance and slow it down. Here's the film speeded up to roughly 1.5 times the speed that NASA presented at, and it's clear it's just a dude in a beach buggy spinning around in Earth's atmosphere. And what NASA's Ministry of Misinformation would say, no, we have mathematics to show why the gravity is pretty similar to on Earth. Even though it's 1/6 the Earth's gravity, objects will be drawn pretty much in the same way that they're brought down in Earth's gravity. And it's just blatant lies, and trying to hide those lies with fairy tale mathematics. And here's something very interesting you notice about the light. The moon has no atmosphere, so you shouldn't get refraction. And this haze that you see
of the light reflecting off the helmet. You shouldn't get that haze. You should get a really clear, clean image of whatever source the light is. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing here light hitting the atoms in the atmosphere and getting scattered in all different directions, creating that haze. That's light travelling through an atmosphere, not through a vacuum. And it's all to intimidate you. It's like the king's new clothes. You're not as smart as us and you're just stupid. And you're poor guy. You're misguided. You're confused. Bullshit. They're liars. The module that you see, the little thing that looks like a Team America or Thunderbirds or Go, it had no radiation shielding. There's no temperature control. And I'm going to show you a clip of the module as it's supposed to have taken off. And this is, as to get back to the point about Bill Casing, he said they couldn't land on Earth. So how the heck could they land on the moon? Well, there's no atmosphere. You have less to push against. You have less control. So I'll play that. I'll put it in here.
I'm going to hit the pro. 99, proceeded, 3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector good.
Now I'm just going to go back and show you this in slow motion. And you'll notice two really obvious things. First thing, which the rocket scientist Bill Casing pointed out, is that you can't hear the rockets, and they would have been deafening, he says. The other thing you see is that when this is taken off, it tilts over to the right, and then it swings back as if it's on a string. And that's what initially made Bill Casing suspect that it was fake, because he said they couldn't even get this lander to land on Earth. They couldn't get it to land on its feet. And when there's no atmosphere, the problem is going to be 10 times, if not 100 times worse. If you've used any spaceship simulations where you're driving a spaceship in real time, trying to manoeuvre it, it's really hard. Any slight movement, it's really hard to get it to realign. Even a tiny tilt like that would have sent it spinning in a clockwise direction. Really hard to get straight again. But apart from the technicality, it looks like something straight out of Team America or Thunderbirds or Go. I'll play it again with sound and you can hear there's absolutely no sound of any rocket.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston.
And this is probably the last point I'll talk about the moon is what they say is that when they got back from the moon, they had moon rocks and they distributed all around the world, and people have studied these moon rocks and confirmed that they are moon rocks. And but the thing is, some of those moon rocks were given to the Netherlands, and the scientists in the Netherlands studied them, and they found that one of these rocks was petrified wood. And it seems to me that they collected asteroids that had hit the Earth, and they had presented these asteroids as being moon rocks. And in amongst these were the asteroids that they picked up this thing that looked like a rock, and they put it as well, and it's given it out to the Netherlands. And the Netherlands scientists looked at it and said, this isn't a rock, this is wood. And there's a particular reason, perhaps, why the Netherlands came out and said that, because the Netherlands have a very lax attitude towards recreational drugs. And one of the drugs, which is very powerful, you've probably heard of this idea of a truth drug. And there actually is a truth drug. And it was widespread in the 1960s. And it was causing loads of problems to the people in control, in the military and in government and in corporations. And it led to what's called the hippie movement, the movement of love. And it's psychedelics. And the most powerful of all the psychedelics, in my experience, is LSD. Essentially, it's a truth drug. You cannot lie on this drug. If you lie, I've done it myself, if you lie, it feels like you're going into hell, like you've entered a horror film. Every horror film you've ever had, you're there. And the only way to get out of it is to tell the truth. It's really, really powerful, and that's why it was outlawed. That's why it was made illegal. If you've seen the film The Matrix, the red pill, that's hallucinogenics. That's LSD. And LSD actually is being used by American troops to take away the suffering and the trauma that they suffered in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. In Iraq especially, where they were lied to. They were told that there were weapons of mass destruction. So they went in, trusting the people that control the military, and they murdered people, they maimed people, they destroyed societies, and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis died as a result of that lie. And those soldiers, they have suffered that trauma, and a lot of them were really suicidal. There was a time, I don't know if it's still the case, but there was a time when there was more American soldiers dying from suicide than were actually being killed in combat. And these American soldiers are now, they're taking LSD, and they're understanding how they were manipulated. And they're not suicidal. They're still traumatised, and they're still carrying a hell of a lot of pain. But they're not traumatised, they're not suicidal. And they're getting their lives back together. And I would say to any of the scientists, agents for NASA, who think that they're being somehow patriotic by telling these lies and supporting these lies, take some LSD. Have the same courage as an American soldier who gives up his life and risks getting bullet in the head, blown apart. Have that same kind of courage. You don't have to get a bullet in the head. You don't have to get blown apart. Just take some LSD and face the truth. Because the truth very often is a lot more scary. If you're suicidal, or you're a murderer and you want to get paid to murder people, or you want to feel like your suicide is vindicated, join the army. It's a perfect place to get murdered or to murder people. But there's a lot of core people in the army who have got integrity and they were lied to. So if you haven't got their courage, you shouldn't be doing science. Because you're endangering people and you're supporting the murderers and the control freaks who are leading this world and the people in this world astray. And the science, a lot of the science, and I'll just mention two names here, Brian Cox and Neil deGrasse Tyson, who are two of the pseudoscientists who are used by the American military to promote their lies and their pseudoscience. And they really piss me off because they are pseudoscientists. They're not scientists. They're like parrots. They take information and they don't think for themselves and think it through. But in their defence, they probably have never had the truth drug LSD. Neil deGrasse Tyson has said it clearly, openly on Joe Rogan's show. He won't take LSD because he doesn't want to lose his mind. Where the science, if he's a scientist, look at the science and take LSD, Neil, and tell the truth. Because the science shows that it's very therapeutic in all kinds of trauma. It's massively therapeutic, and it's saving these American soldiers from suicide and all kinds of trauma, and the trauma that their families are going through. It's saving their families, it's saving their communities, it's bringing them back together, it's bringing their humanity and the integrity back that they went into war and had betrayed on them. Brian Cox is probably the same, probably hasn't taken LSD and actually thought for himself. And he's promoted a lot of pseudoscience, like the Big Bang. And just before we go on to the Big Bang, LSD in the 1960s, it was being spread across the world. Wars were coming to an end. Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, places like that were progressive. Until NASA said they got to the moon. And the lies kind of spiraled. So, and if people had this truth drug, you wouldn't have court cases going on for months. You wouldn't have politicians lying out of their mouth. Every politician, every civil servant, everybody who's under suspicion of a crime, give them LSD, and within an hour, you're going to get the truth. But that doesn't suit the people in power, and that's why it's been made illegal for the last few decades, and why the world has turned upside down and become insane, controlled by control freaks and all kinds of sexual immorality, all kinds of murder, all kinds of really dangerous drugs being pushed by governments for different agendas, for money basically. But in terms of the science, Big Bang. The Big Bang is not science. It never was science. It breaks every single known law of physics. But it's an idea that people latched onto for one or two reasons. In many ways, it's like flat earth science. It's like flat earthers on champagne and steak and cocaine. It takes one or two ideas and it runs with those ideas and say that these are absolute concrete evidence. It's like the flat earthers saying the fact that there's no flights go over the South Pole is absolute concrete evidence. And they take other little bits and they build up this science fiction ideas. And one of the ideas that's fueling the flat earth actually is Einstein's acceleration gravity equivalence principle. And I proved why it's wrong. In my work, I proved why it's wrong. My channels keep getting shut down by Big Bang and particle model pseudoscientists because I make it so simple and so easy to understand why the models are wrong, and they keep shutting my work down, even though they don't seem to understand it's in their interest, it's in the interest of the survival of their kids that they get the real science. The Big Bang breaks quantum mechanics, which states that you can't have two particles in the same space, but the Big Bang has every particle in the universe in a tiny microscopic dot. It violates Einstein's relativity and James Maxwell's laws of electromagnetism, which show that nothing can move faster than the speed of light. And Big Bang cosmologists will say, well, we can see things moving faster than light, and they say it's due to dark energy, but I prove it's an optical illusion. It's caused by gravitational lensing. It violates the laws of cause and effect. They give no cause, or it just happened. Basically, they say, shut up and don't try to argue with us, or we will shut you up, we'll ban you, we'll block you from discussions, we'll censor your work, ruin your careers and your lives. And when more data shows that the Big Bang is wrong and it doesn't work, if they can't censor it, they just make up science fiction, imaginary physics, to try and fix it. But the science fiction never works for long. But because it destroys, and the first time it happened to me, I had a channel and I put one comment on, it was actually the first year that I got involved in quantum physics, and I found a logical explanation for the double slit experiment. And I figured out how the universe is working and how it's not, and how it's being misunderstood. I didn't have the full theory of everything worked out. It took me years to get the detail of how it actually works. But within the first year, I realised the framework. When I explained the framework for redshift, for stars, there was a guy who won the Nobel Prize, Smith from Australia, won the Nobel Prize for his work on redshift in 2011, 2012. I'm not sure which, but I can't remember. But I put one, he did a YouTube video, a presentation about his Nobel Prize win, and I put one comment in his presentation. He says, we've a handful of stars that seem to be moving closer, and beyond that, all the other stars moving away. We can't explain it. And he shrugged his shoulders as if it doesn't matter. Now, it wasn't a handful of planets. A handful of planets or stars is 5. You're talking about millions of stars within the Milky Way, which you get a redshift where they're coming closer. And even in the Andromeda, it's coming closer. But beyond that, they tend to move away. And I put one comment on his YouTube channel, and I explained the correct model and why they're misunderstanding redshift. And naively, I thought he'd be delighted and I'd get some kind of conversation. But he went ballistic. Well, I don't know if it was he, but whoever's run the channel, I presume it probably was him, or whoever was running the channel for him, they complained to YouTube and they suspended my channel. And I wrote to YouTube and I explained where all my evidence was coming from. Isaac Newton, from Einstein, and from Andrea Ghez was all the evidence that I used. It's like the best data in history. And I made common sense out of it. But because he had a Nobel Prize, and because he's going out every night getting probably $10,000, $20,000 a night just for standing in a room and talking about his Nobel Prize win, and everybody's treating him like a demigod of science who can say no wrong, he was fuming. If that was a tin hat person talking nonsense, they just ignore that comment. But he went to really far extreme measures to make sure that my channel was closed down, and it was. And my second channel, I made sure I never contacted him again. I had about 160 videos on my second channel, and it got closed down again by Big Bang particle model pseudoscientists, because I was shown where they were giving the wrong information, making it impossible to understand physics. And eventually my channel got shut down. But as for the Big Bang, the science of the Big Bang, it's basically the jack and the beanstalk of physics. I'm sure you probably know the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. If you were born any time before the TikTok generation, you'll know the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. It's a pity if you don't know the story, but it's about this guy. He goes off to the market and he sells a cow for a few magic beans. This guy in the market tells him these are magic beans, and they'll put them in the ground and they'll grow into a magic beanstalk, and you can feed your family forever on them. And Jack swaps the cow for this bag of beans, and he gets back home and his mother beats his shit out of him. How could you be so stupid? And she takes the beans and she throws them outside. And the next morning, they wake up and the beans have grown, and they've grown so big, they're thicker than a tree, and it goes all the way up to heaven. And Jack ends up going up this beanstalk. And now, the Big Bang is like one molecule. Now, Jack and the Beanstalk breaks every law of biology, because you know it takes time for a seed to germinate. It's just fairy tale for the sake of fun, for making a certain point. But with the Big Bang, it's like one molecule, not even one molecule, even smaller than one molecule in one bean, and not the next morning. Within a second, it's expanded, and it fills up the entire universe. It's just nuts. It's nonsense. And anybody who's promoted the Big Bang, they know it's nonsense. They know there's all these mathematical tricks to try and make it look real. It's not real. And with their own telescope, the most recent one, the James Webb, actually before the James Webb, in 2021, the Indian research organisation who got Chandra to the moon and found water on the moon, when NASA had been saying for 50 years that there was no water on the moon. They found water on the moon. Now, NASA took claim for that, but it was on the Chandra mission that water was found on the moon. And in 2021, some of the people who were involved in the same institution in Bangalore, the Indian research organisation, they released peer-reviewed papers, top quality scientific papers, showing that the red shift is counteracted by a blue shift. But people for the last 100 years haven't been either looking at the blue shift or they haven't been including it, because it shows that the universe is not expanding. It shows that there's some kind of oscillation which they don't understand, but they're saying the universe is definitely not expanding. So the Big Bang has no basis in science. Now, their paper, even though it's peer-reviewed and released, and they're one of the top space organisations on the planet, their paper, it's been banned. It's not allowed in any institutions in the West which teach the Big Bang. It's not even allowed to be listed on Archive, which is one of the most popular archives for scientific papers. So people can't even look at it and check it, because they don't want people to know. They want the people to believe in the Big Bang, because it makes lots of money, it controls people's minds, and there's a very sinister reason why that's really dangerous, which I'm going to get to. But that's this kind of censorship, and they've censored me, they've censored other people, and any scientists who come up with evidence showing that the Big Bang or the particle model is wrong, they treat them, they say to the unsuspecting public, these guys are idiots. They haven't got a clue. Now, I solved two of the most famous mathematical problems in the world, as I said at the start, and any maths teacher at second level education can check those and know that they're true. So I'm not a nutcase, and the amount of focus and concentration that it takes to solve a problem like that, I can't even begin to explain. I had to lose everything. I had to lose my house, get estranged from my family, my community, treated like an idiot for years, still am by a lot of my friends and family. And the amount of focus that takes, it's just really hard to describe, working on it 24/7, but I did them. And if any of the people in academia had solved even one of those problems, you would know their names. They would be all over the media. But they censor me. And when I put them up on maths forums, when I put them up on social media, the hatred that I get from the community is just, it's almost like the text is in green. They hate me. It's not me being paranoid. The mathematics is very clear. They come up with all these things, and the moderators on some of these math forums, like Reddit, or the worst of all, I was getting emails about how I should be suicidal from these guys who run things like Reddit. So how do you know that the Big Bang is wrong? Well, first, the fairy tale analogy, it breaks every known law of physics. It's been promoted as fact, even though it's always been a theory. The James Webb Space Telescope, which was set up by NASA and company to take readings of the universe. The readings, they predicted when you get near the time of the Big Bang, it just became like a cloud of gas. When they got to 280 million years after the Big Bang, they found galaxies which are older and more mature and more massive than the Milky Way, which according to their theory takes 10 billion years to form. So basically, it's like there's no explanation for how the Big Bang happened. It just happened. Well, how do you explain that? Well, it just happened. Just accept it just happened. Well, how did time come into it? Time come into existence? Well, time came into existence with the Big Bang. How? It just happened. It's nonsense. It's pseudoscience, and it doesn't work. And in metaphorical terms, finding galaxies which are more mature and more massive than the Milky Way is like the virgin birth of the universe giving birth to fully grown adults. It's not science, it's pseudoscience. And these guys like Brian Cox and Neil deGrasse Tyson, who would say that this is fact, they're not scientists. The real scientists know that it's always been in doubt. They don't get up on the media and take loads of money for promoting the stuff. They work on engineering and stuff, but they know it doesn't make sense. They know it's fairy tale physics. But Brian and Neil and others are the public face. To me, they're probably not that bright. They're probably nice people, and they're probably just very easily manipulated, very good at taking facts and figures, which they believe are genuine. As far as I know, Brian and Neil have done nothing. They've contributed nothing to science, as far as I'm aware. They've solved no major problems. Nothing. And as for time travel, Einstein's relativity shows that clocks move at different rates in different when they have different energy levels. It's nothing to do with time travel. Anybody who believes in time travel is either lying to you or they're just not very bright. They're not able to think very clearly.
And just to explain about time dilation, clocks tick at different rates depending on their energy level, which is dependent on how close they are to gravity, and depending on how fast they're traveling through space. So when you have two clocks and they show the same time, and you bring them to different locations over a period of time, and you bring them back together, they will show different times. The clocks will have ticked at different rates. But the thing is, when you bring those two clocks back together, they both exist in the same moment. And they always exist in the same moment, no matter where they are in space or what their energy levels are, even if they tick fast or slow. In some ways, it's kind of like saying, oh, if my watch runs out of battery and slows down and stops, time stops. It's silly. It's like something you expect to be said by someone like Homer Simpson or Father Ted. But because these guys are so respected and so revered, people go, oh yeah, oh, time travel, oh, okay. And it's just nonsense.
Because, and I figured out how time dilation works at the quantum level because I solved quantum gravity and I explained the structure of the space-time fabric, which you can check on my channel, Breaking Physics Beyond the Standard Model. And if that goes down, it's on my, I have a backup channel, it's on odyssey.com. It's Science Not Dogma. And I also have them up on Yandex, which is a Russian server. So if it goes down in the West, it's still on the Russian server, and I have links to those as well. That's slightly more safe. But the best thing to do is just to spread this information fast. YouTube in many ways are pretty good at keeping information where it is verified. Good at keeping it on. So hopefully they won't take this down. But if they do, it's up on those other resources, as I say. The CMB is another thing that they say, the cosmic microwave background. I've seen Brian say that this is fact. We know it definitely happened because of CMB. Now, the CMB doesn't actually make sense when you put it in the Big Bang. It's only one interpretation, and there's many other interpretations. And what I show is that it's resonance in the field, because the field is a fabric. We feel like we're moving through space, but we're not. We're actually made out of electrons. Everything is made out of electrons, like tiny little magnets holding everything together. Even protons and neutrons, they're electrons and positrons caught stuck to each other, moving through the fabric of space. As I say, that's explained in depth. But the thing about the CMB is, CMB, the more readings that come in about the CMB, it shows it's incompatible with what was predicted by the Big Bang. And the Big Bang pseudoscientists keep saying to the public, maybe there's something we don't understand, maybe there's something that's wrong, and maybe we'll find a way to fix it. It's nonsense. There's no way to fix it. Fully grown adults being born from an immaculate conception, virgin birth, it's just not science. Never was. But these guys are still using it as science, pretending it's science, because they've got massive money. They've got massive control over the media. And the idea that stars form from gas clouds is nonsense. It can't be the correct model of stars, and the stars go through a finite amount of fuel and then they burn up. That's not the case. It can't be the case. And in the equations that are used to justify that, it's the Jeans model. Now, the Jeans model works well where you have gravitational bodies there, because you need to get gas to stick together. You need to contain the mass first. There's nowhere to contain it in space. Entropy means that everything will go disperse. But they don't include entropy conveniently in their equation for stars collapsing from gas clouds under their own gravity. Gases do not have gravity. They don't understand gravity. Gravity is a compaction of the space-time fabric, leading to the geometry with a path or the shortest route, and they lead towards gravitational bodies, which are massive bodies. They don't have gravity. They're subject to entropy. Any gases you try to put them together, it takes massive pressure and containment to get any kind of reaction with gas. It's just pseudoscience. And the idea that stars have a finite amount of fuel and they run out of fuel is not true either. They're not fueled by nuclear fusion. There's nuclear fusion happens in the sun, but it's not the main source of energy. The main source of energy is friction, because as these trillions upon trillions upon trillions of electrons and positrons tightly compacted together, moving through the space-time fabric, causes massive friction, heat, and the creation of energy. And if you look at the data from the core of our sun, there's a neutrino spectrum coming from the core of our sun, telling us that there's a dark star, what people call a black hole. There's a black hole at the centre of our sun. Well done, the Soundgarden, that song, Black Hole Sun. Whether they got that from a dream or a premonition, I don't know. But that's exactly what's happening in the sun. There's a black hole at the centre of our sun. Einstein's theory of relativity predicted what are called black holes and white holes. You get these areas where everything is sucked in, and you also get these areas where matter comes out. But they're one and the same. At the centre of our sun, you've got a black hole, a dark star. It's not a hole as such, it's a dark star. And because it can't escape, the gravity is so strong, it pulls in the space-time fabric and it grows, and it creates mass and heat and friction around it, because it's moving through the space-time fabric and it's so compacted, it's rubbing all the time, it's creating massive amounts of heat. That's what powers the sun. And we know this for a fact because they did readings from the planets in the solar system, like Jupiter and Saturn and other planets with volcanic activity. And according to their model, these planets should be giving off certain levels of energy. But the amount of energy that they're giving off is way more than is predicted by their model. Because these planets are growing. They have a dark star inside them. Any planet that has volcanic activity has a dark star, what people call a black hole, in their core, and it's generating energy, it's generating heat and matter. It's creating matter, it's creating energy. Now this is impossible under the particle model, but the particle model doesn't work. It can't work because there's an empty space, and you can't pull something through an empty space without being physically connected. There has to be a physical connection everywhere in space, and that's what my model shows. Neo-string theory shows that everything is like a string elastic type lattice, and everything is pulled by the negative pressure within the ether within the lattice. The particle model is pseudoscience. Just run out of memory on my other phone, so I'll try and get through this as quick as I can. Nuclear fusion, as I say, is a lie. It takes thousands of times more energy put in to create a tiny amount of energy. It doesn't work. It's wrong. And this idea that the universe is not real, this is based on Bell's theorem, which was a theorem by another guy from Northern Ireland, John Alexander Bell, who showed these mathematical equations, which show that the mathematics of quantum mechanics can't be logical. There must be something illogical, like something supernatural happening within quantum mechanics. It's not compatible with logic. But I showed that actually it is compatible with logic. And I've got that on my channel, and it's pretty simple to understand. It takes a bit of time. You do have to read about it, about Bell's theorem. But once you do, you can see that my solution is exactly what's happening. But again, I don't dress it up with loads of mathematics, and it probably pisses people off again because it proves the particle model wrong, and perhaps because it proves this Nobel Prize went wrong. People aren't talking about it, and they're still keeping my channel down. The universe is definitely real, and that's what pissed off Einstein. He said the universe can't just be making it up as it goes along. It can't just be random. There has to be fixed rules, and I proved that there are fixed rules. But the really interesting thing about quantum entanglement and the double-slit experiment is what's really behind the measurement, because the really, if you don't understand quantum physics and Bell's theory, it's probably really difficult to understand. And it'll take me time to explain. So I think I'll just do that. Go and see my videos on breaking physics beyond the standard model on one of my other channels, and you'll see. So I'll get on to 9/11. Through 9/11, people actually believe that was by a handful of Muslims. Now, as I say, here's a film about the BBC announcing the collapse of Building 7 before it actually went down, and you can see it in the background.
This is a video about the demolition of World Trade Center Building Number 7. And the BBC live report on the day saying that the building had collapsed 30 minutes before the building had actually collapsed. That's Solomon Building, World Trade Center Building Number 7, circled in red. And here's the live BBC report from that morning, where you can see the tower still there in the background.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing, and indeed it has. It seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
I think there's going to be a lot of very, very traumatized people that has hit them very, very hard.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley in Manhattan.
So it seems pretty clear that somebody realised they mixed up the time zones and released the script too soon and cut the feed. And roughly 20 minutes later, Building 7 did come down.
Just to make the point again, it's not that everybody in the BBC would have had to be in on that. Even the newsreaders mightn't have been aware. They're just getting a script that's handed to them. And from my research, it seems to have come from Reuters, which oddly enough controls almost all the news that goes to different outlets like the BBC, CNN, Fox News. So how much control they have over the BBC and the Zionist agenda that you can see in the BBC, it's hard to tell.
Now there was $2.3 trillion was announced missing from the coffers of the Pentagon on the 10th of September, the day before it happened. And of course these guys would have known that the very first place to look for evidence would be in the Twin Towers, the centre of the banking network. And what happened the next day? They got bombed. Apparently by Muslims who were trained to fly by the American administration. Muslims with kitchen knives. There's no doubt they were on those planes, but they didn't plan that. That was a massive military operation. And the engineers report, there's an engineers report, thousands of engineers studied the structure of the Twin Towers and Building 7 and said it couldn't have happened. They didn't have the heat. They didn't have the capacity to bring those buildings down. It's a lie. But that, again, they don't control the media. It's the people with the money, with the power who control the media. And they control, you get these ideas that Fox and CNN, they're all at loggerheads. They're all controlled by the same people. It's just like a stage show. To get people to appear like they're loggerheads. They are loggerheads because they believe it as well, the newscasters. But the news that they're getting is fed down from whatever military that's run. It's probably a private military run the American army, run the British army. And that private military is run probably by the banks. That's what all the evidence tells us. And so that when you've got $3 trillion at your disposal, you can do a hell of a lot. You can twist the arm of a hell of a lot of people. And that's what's been happening. I did see some misinformation reports saying that it was in accounting there, that they were talking about bureaucracy, not about being missing, which is not true, because it was missing since 1999. So if it was bureaucracy, that certainly got sorted out within 2 years, but it wasn't. And it was used as an excuse to invade Iraq and cause the murder of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And the thing about the USA and the UK, they knew that if you want to end a conflict, if you want to bring some kind of peace, you talk. And Saddam Hussein, no matter what you think of him, he was dying to talk. He was begging to talk. They had no interest in talking. They wanted to get in and murder people and steal oil and resources. They had no interest. But what I do know is that there's a friend of mine, and her brother works in a taxi in New York, and he said that for months before 9/11, he was getting calls to go and pick people up from the Twin Towers who were being let go home early. They said that they were doing refixing of the wiring in the Twin Towers. So for months, there's lorries, vans with cables and all sorts of things going in and out of the Twin Towers for months before 9/11. Obviously, rigging up the dynamite or whatever kind of explosives was used in that building. When you look at the way the building come down, and there's explosions happening in series before it actually collapses. Again, that's hearsay. That's not evidence, but there's enough evidence there for anybody has got enough integrity and who has enough of the truth to know that it's the truth. There's no way that the BBC could have known about that before it happened. There's no way. They knew so much detail. It was a planned, sophisticated military operation. And the really sinister thing that people need to take this seriously and understand that this affects you is because what NASA are hiding and whoever's funding them are hiding is that we risk, as we stand on this planet, we risk losing all our power in an instant. There was an eruption from the sun on the far side of the sun in 2012. And lucky for us, it was on the far side of the sun. Because if it had been facing the earth, it could have wiped out nearly all electrical networks on the earth. So we would have been left with millions of people in cities, no pumps, no fuel, no water, no ATMs, no emergency services, no lights, no phones, no TVs, going, what the heck just happened? Nobody explaining what just happened. And we're facing that every day. Probably part of why I seem so nervous and I stutter and I'm so emotional. Every day I wake up and I know that we face that potentially happening. And if you think that that's conspiracy theory, there's a video by a physicist in America. It's called Physics Girl, is the channel, and her video is "It Missed Us by 9 Days," and she talks about some of the science and some of the repercussions, and she says it would take us maybe up to 10 years to build the infrastructure that was damaged. Now that is if we're prepared, and we know. If people aren't prepared, you're going to have massacres all over the planet, and it happened just like that. And that's one of the reasons why they still keep going, even though the Cold War is supposedly over, even though we've got that conflict going with Ukraine. I'm not going to talk about what I think of that and how that I think was manipulated by the USA, and it was, well, not the USA, no, it was manipulated by whoever the core military are who ran 9/11. It's not they use the USA military, but it's not the USA military, and they use the BBC and they use all the media. They're extremely sophisticated. I don't know exactly who they are. They're that sophisticated. They've got $3 trillion at their disposal, at least. So that's a hell of a lot of money to throw around with things that they already have a monopoly on, almost all corporations and media outlets. But yeah, that could happen any day, and we could be prepared. And my model of physics shows that we can have unlimited energy and we can multiply matter. There's a device which can multiply matter. It multiplies electrons. Now, the current idea is that the electrons are getting knocked out of the apparatus. What it is, you send an electron at one end and millions of electrons come out the other end. And the theory is that these electrons are being knocked out from within the system, within the apparatus, the charged channel plate. But I'm saying that's not the case. And I'm saying the way to test that is to put, say, a hydrogen atom in one end and through the vacuum, one hydrogen. And I'm saying you're going to get a cloud of hydrogen coming out the other side. And this is consistent with what Jesus did, multiplying bread and fish. And when you look at the science of chi or kundalini, when you can line all the electrons in your body, you're basically pushing out a current through your hands. You're pushing out a current, and that can be used to heal. We know, if you look at the film of people using chi in China, for example, Indonesia, it's really, really, really powerful. And if Jesus was able to manipulate this and put matter, what's happening is because every bit of matter has wavelength. There's waves constantly coming off every atom. We know that for a fact. Every atom gives off waves. So if Jesus was able to push those waves back, they would act like spray, getting twisted into more vortexes, more matter. So it's very, very possible. The science, the real model of physics shows that Jesus Christ did actually multiply bread and fish by forcing chi, the ether, against matter, therefore causing the waves to be transformed into more and more matter. This is science. It's not fairy tale. It's absolute science. And I've been begging people for years to try this, run this experiment, and they won't, because they're so indoctrinated into the pseudoscientific models which do not work that they will not listen. And that's really, as I say, that could be happen any day. And we could be, if we're prepared in time, we can prepare for it. And it's not too difficult to prepare for it. But we need, if we're not prepared, it is going to be like a massacre all over the planet. If it had been facing us in 2012, there'd probably less than 1 billion people left on the earth. We would have had massacres, street massacres all over the earth as people start to realise that there's no food, there's no water, and we have to fight for survival, and cities just erupt into probably Rwanda-style, horrific, nightmare-type violence. And that could happen any day. It could happen today, tomorrow. It's a fact. And NASA know that. They have cities built underground. That's not conspiracy theory. That's a fact. And they think that if they can control the public, they can stay top dog, they can amass amounts of resources, have us protected underneath the ground in insulated underground dungeons. So they have their weapons, they have their backup, they have the computers still running, and they can come out after there's been some kind of apocalypse and people are murdering, and they have the technology to stay in control. That's why they lie to us. That's it. They're violent control freaks. And it's in their interest. If anybody is part of that organization, I am telling you, it's in your interest to take some LSD, the truth drug, and face the truth. And you'll find the courage to tell the truth. And you'll find the courage to tell it to the public. Because it's in your kids' interest. Anybody who survives that, they're going to come out into a horrific world, fighting from as soon as they come out. It's not a world anybody wants to survive to. And if people realise that, maybe there'll be more courageous people speaking up and explaining exactly what this organisation is that controls the world, controls the American military, controls the governments of the world. The other danger that we have is from AI. People do not understand just how dangerous AI is. It's already perverting the minds of young people. See, there's AI news bulletins, and all generations have been fooled. Most specifically the younger generation, like sea monsters and polar bears being cuddly, being saved by people in boats, and the polar bears acting like little puppies. It's nonsense. Polar bears are just freaking, they're the monsters of nature. The mother polar bear has to hide her own kids from the father, because the father will eat their own kids if he finds them. The idea the polar bears are, but that's just one example. AI is really, really dangerous, and some of the experts say that it could wipe out humanity within 10 years. They disagree about when it can happen, but they're going ahead, they're still developing it. On one hand, they're saying it's really dangerous, it could spell the end of humanity, but we're getting paid lots of money, so well, let's just keep it going. He's getting more money than me, so I'm not going to give up. It's just really short-sighted, thinking that money is going to save you, or money is going to be some comfort. In the event of a solar wipeout, there's going to be no way. Money is no use. Truth is the only thing which will save humanity. The other thing I say, AI, Jay Tuck, he's at TED Talk in 2015. He's an ex-American soldier, and he talks about AI, and it's already killing people. In 2015, it was killing people. You have drones flying over Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, identifying suspects and dropping bombs, murdering them. No relay going back to the USA and somebody in office confirming whether it was or not. AI itself going killing innocent people all across Asia and the Middle East. And if anybody thinks that that can't happen in their own home, they're nuts. This can happen. We've already got soldiers in American cities treating American people as if they're public enemy number one. Enemies to who? Honest people, hard-working people. Many of them homeless, had their homes stolen so they can be left empty to rot. That's not patriotism. That's not any kind of humanity. That's not civilization. That's evil on a scale it's hard to describe. The other thing I said in my theory of everything is not just the multiplication of matter, it's free energy, because the double slit experiment shows that energy is created as a matter of time, and it propagates all the time. And it's been proven. Now, Tesla said that he had developed this, and when he did, his offices were burgled, his workshops were burgled, and he ended up living in a hotel room for the rest of his life. People say that he went a little bit crazy and he decided to stay in his hotel room for the rest of his life. Not that he was a fantastic inventor and he was under house arrest for the rest of his life in a hotel room in New York, as far as I'm aware. No, that he was mad and he decided himself to lock himself up in a hotel room for the rest of his life. You know, if you believe that, you're very, very, very gullible. And his invention, what he was saying, be creating electricity from radio waves, It's actually been done by a guy in Zimbabwe, Maxwell Chikumbutso, and he's developed this battery which can power a car, a TV, even a helicopter. And you can take this battery out of your car when you get home, put it in your home, and it'll power your house. You don't need any wires. You don't need fuel. And once you have this, it powers itself just by the fact that there's radio waves going through it all the time. And it's been independently checked and verified. This is real. This is real technology. But it's not in the news. Because these guys have known for over 70 years since they broke into Tesla's workshop and burgled his papers and his apparatus. They've known this, that there's free energy. But that's a hell of a lot of control they lose if they don't have people paying for electricity bills, for fuel bills, and all sorts of... People have freedom. And they've 70 years they've kept that from us. And Maxwell has proven it. He tried to go through the peer review process, and they said that's impossible under the laws of physics. Under the laws of physics of the particle model, which are wrong. That's why it's impossible. So he said he went ahead and he built it himself. And now he's trying to get it started up. Apparently there's been a few attempts in his life already, but he's trying to get a factory started up in Zimbabwe, so that African people can benefit from it. Let's hope so. And let's hope so it goes ahead. And it's great to see that development, but it's an absolute crime to humanity that that's not being talked about in any of the Western media. And it's no surprise, because they're all controlled by the same people who control the military of the USA and Europe and all other militaries around the world. And the thing that probably causes a lot of people just to turn off with my work is that I explain that there may be a way to communicate direct with God, to prove the existence of God and communicate direct with God using light in computers. And this is probably a thing when a quantum physicist opens up his email or answers the phone to me, and I try to explain this, they're going, this guy thinks he can talk. He believes in God. The thing is, it's an experiment test for God. But the fact that someone even believes in God, they look down, they just switch off. And I've contacted probably thousands of physicists over the last 3 years, trying to get them, somebody to run this experiment, and they won't run it. Just because they don't believe in it. But if it works, it would answer all our problems. It would be able to explain where every criminal is in the public, in governments, and how to put an end to all the suffering, how to end all diseases, how to safeguard the environment, how to develop machines to travel into space, if that's possible. Under the current laws, it's impossible. We can't go to space. We can't get to the moon. We can't get beyond close Earth orbit. This idea of going to the moon and going to the Mars is just fairy tale space cadet nonsense. That's about enough for me to talk in this video. As I say, it's a phenomenal achievement that these guys got away with so many lies and so much pseudoscience for years. But the real model of physics is on my channel for anybody, and it's really easy to understand. It's all in classical physics terms. So if you're in high school and above, if you look at my channel, you'll start to understand the correct model of physics, and you'll start to understand just how much underhand tactics and how much destruction and anti-science there is in the media, and how much you're being controlled. Your mind is being controlled, your society is being controlled, and how much your future is being made in jeopardized by these anti-science, these violent people who think that they can control and stay one step ahead of everybody. Can't. And apart from that, the evidence for God is just phenomenal when you look at the real model of physics. And all these guys who say that they're scientists, and they said the science points that there's no need for the existence of God, they're all liars. They're liars. So if you wanna survive, you wanna protect the people, don't be fooled by people who are really violent. Look at the facts for yourself. Think for yourself, please, because it's the only way you're going to survive. It's the only way we survive. As I say, we're a planet, we're a species. As I say, we're a species depend on trust, and that's why we survive, because we are a pack, and trust is such an integral part of our survival throughout the ages. And if we want to go ahead and survive, we have to have the truth. We have to trust The genuine people who are telling the truth, not the people with the most money, most control, most power. The people who are telling the truth. Thanks for watching if you watched this far, and please do share this, because literally the survival of civilization could depend on it. We've got to get past these lies and these pseudoscientists controlling our minds and these violent people controlling our minds. And we can. But it takes people facing the facts and sharing the facts and doing it as fast as possible, because at this stage every minute counts. So much destruction, there's so much danger in the world. The faster we get on track with the correct model of physics and start getting humanity acting like a true global family, which can happen, the sooner we're going to live in a better world, a more safe world, and we're going to start seeing an end to all the madness, all the suffering, all the pain, all the violence, all the control. And as I say, that experiment to talk with God is an experiment. All it's going to take for somebody is one person to try it. Run the double slit experiment with 2 detectors, one slightly further than the other, diffract the light and see if it generates binary code. And there's probably a possible way to use it in quantum computers, and it could end all our problems. So hopefully somebody does try that. In the meantime, please share the information.
And perhaps the final point I'll make is that we all have a tendency to think that it's not going to happen to me, or things will be all right. But the reality is that this could happen any time, any day. And let's hope it doesn't. But it's going to happen sometime in the future. And unless we're prepared, we're going to face an apocalyptic type situation. And we can prepare and make sure that we don't face those kinds of conditions. But we have to do it now. We have to start acting now. So please, if you're watching this, just share this video now, before you go off and do something else and it goes into the back of your mind. Because if it happens, it'll be too late. There'll be billions of people wiped out in horrific type violence. We've had the warning from nature. Nature has given us the warning in 2012.
13 years ago, and the people in control have not acted. They're not going to act. Not only are the people in power not acting and not going to act, they're trying to block people from understanding what's going on and allowing people to prepare for themselves. This might be the last genuine warning you get. So please, hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Please share it with everybody that you know, everybody that you love and care about, and then go about your business and put it in the back of your mind. But please at least share it.